Hello everyone, it is Dylan from Yugioh Everything back with another video, and I have a very special video for you guys today. I am reviewing the infamous Season 0 of Yugioh. That's right, the very first Yugioh anime that was adapted. It only lasted 27 episodes, and I am going to give my thoughts on it. Recently, for me at least, and I'm sure for a lot of other people, the Why Yugioh Season 0 videos have been popping up, on my feed all over the place, and I've watched all these different scenes, and I was like, you know what? A few other people have told me I should watch it and give my review on it, and I'm like, you know what, I'm going to do that. I'm going to binge watch it. So on Friday, I watched about 10 episodes. Saturday, I watched another 9, and then Sunday, Monday, I watched another 8, and I finished off the show, and I'm going to get into my thoughts on it, and hopefully you guys down below will give me your thoughts as well. It'll probably be if I can review an Arc 5 episode for 15 minutes, it's going to be tough to condense this to a 15-20 minute review, but I will do my best. Also, BYG Aigami, a really good Yugi-tuber. His videos are so aesthetically pleasing. I think he's amazing when it comes to editing and making thumbnails. Offered to make me a thumbnail, so that's why my thumbnail for this video looks very similar to one of his thumbnails, because he did make it for me. I think he's planning on doing a Season 0 review at some point. You guys should definitely follow him. He is a really, really good Yugi-tuber and a really nice guy, so I'll link him down below, and a big shout out to him again for making this thumbnail. So let's get right into it. What did I think of Yu-Gi-Oh! Season 0? I liked it a lot. I really, really enjoyed the season. Now, there were a few things that irritated me, or not irritated me, but kind of confused me a little bit, but there were some elements that I loved. First of all, it is a very dark show. It's very dark. I mean, you have things ranging from, chloroform, date rape, to attempts setting people on fire in these punishment games, and getting, Yugioh eaten by literally these monsters that are right from the nightmare realm. Really, really dark and mature. Even humor. I mean, there's one episode where the humor, there's this running gag that Janucci and Honda, who's Tristan in the English dub, are like addicted to lewd videos, addicted to, porn videos. I mean, very, very mature stuff. And, as someone who is 22 years old, I like dark elements, so I figured I would enjoy the show, and I really, really did enjoy it. The opening, I thought, is tremendous. I love the opening song, Jesus. And I've watched Little Karibo's Abridged series for so long, and I never knew where that opening was from, and I never bothered to listen to the Yu-Gi-Oh! Season 0 opening. Love the song, and I love the ending as well. I would argue that the opening and ending for Season 0 is maybe better than any opening and ending from Duel Monsters. Now, Overlap and Eyes, the 5th opening and ending respectively, might be a bit of an exception, but the music in Season 0 is great. Every time Yami Yugi entered the fray and that music, that pump-up music came out, like, it was just awesome. So basically, the story is, again, it's only 27 episodes. The story is Yugi, who is a young boy, and he solves the Millennium Puzzle. And a lot, you might see a few screenshots that I use that are from the manga, because this is really, really heavily based off the manga. This is not a prequel to Duel Monsters, and that's why I think Season 0, that term kind of confused me a little bit, because I always figured maybe it was a prequel to Duel Monsters. It has nothing to do with Duel Monsters. This is an anime based off the manga entirely. So that's why some of the pictures you see might be what I'm talking about, just in the manga version, because again, it's the same exact thing. Some of the scenes are even identical to the scenes that are depicted in the manga. So Yugi, who has a very, very high-pitched voice, and I really felt bad for the kid. Like, they make him out to be such an innocent character, and I thought they did a really good job at doing that. He, gets bullied by Honda and Janucci, Tristan and Joey, just like in Duel Monsters, where in Duel Monsters he kind of starts off as being friends with them, where in this show, and then you learn the backstory, where in this show you actually see that backstory play out. They get beaten up by Yugioh, who is also the guy in 5Ds, the cop in 5Ds, and that's how they become friends. He also beats up Yugi, and that's when we first see Atem. He solves the Millennium Puzzle. His wish on the Millennium Puzzle is to get friends. It was the same wish that he had in Duel Monsters, and Atem comes out, and I have to say, Atem is an absolute monster. I mean, he's almost a villain, you could even argue, in Season 0. Every time he comes out, he just says, it's game time, and challenges people to these sadistic, crazy games. Not really sadistic, crazy games, but more these games where, when they lose, something sadistic and crazy and messed up happens to them. Now, here's where I had a little bit of an issue. I thought there were some characters who deserved a little bit worse than what they got. Like, for instance, all the characters that he did stuff to, I thought deserved it, absolutely. But there were some characters that, for Yugioh, for example, he gets swallowed, as you can see here, by these disgusting sea creatures, and that was just one of the worst ways that I think you can be punished in one of these punishment games. Another person who held Anzu at hostage was set on fire, and I mean, that's kind of understandable. But one that someone who I thought deserved so much worse was this clown who chloroformed Anzu, and you have to assume was going to sexually assault or sexually abuse an unconscious Anzu, or Taya in the dub, and all that happened is they played a game where he got knocked out by his own chloroform, and that's all that happened. And I thought that he deserved a little bit worse, because what he was about to do was one of the more heinous acts that I think the entire show kind of depicted. So I thought there were some characters that got off a little easy, but either way, Yami is an absolute monster, and I loved it. Every time he came out, and he only came out in most episodes the last like 4 minutes. Now there were some episodes where he came out at the halfway point, but almost every time he came out during the second half of the episode. And I feel like a lot of these episodes you could just watch on their own. Besides the Kaiba Yugi storyline, there's not much of a continuous storyline. And then things really pick up in episode 13 in terms of the plot, because Anzu doesn't really know who saved her from the chloroform kid that I just showed you before, and she notices the mark that Yami had on his hand, and then at the very end of the episode, she notices the same mark on Yugi's hand, and I loved that scene. And that's when the plot, at least from Anzu and Yami and them actually discovering that Yugi has this other personality, that's where it really picked up, and that's where I really enjoyed things. Episode 14, you had one of my favorite episodes. It was a Ferris wheel episode. Anzu was trapped in a Ferris wheel. There's basically been a bomber, a terrorist going around that's playing these games, and just to kind of see how Yami fought through the game and was able to find out where this person was and arrest this person in the end, or at least arrest him with the help of the cops. I loved that episode, and that was the first episode where you finally got to see that Anzu, recognize that Yami is not his own person, but that Yugi has another personality. So episode 13 and 14, that's where, to me, the storyline really, really starts picking up. But I could make the case that you can watch this show from episode 19 to episode 27 and still grasp the majority of the plot. In episode 19, Bakura debuts and Mokuba debuts. And Mokuba, I'm going to get into each character individually towards the end of this, but Mokuba is much more sinister. I mean, 30 times more sinister than he is in Duel Monsters, but I'm going to get into that, each character individually, towards the end of this, the review. Episode 21, Bakura transfers into the school. Of course he does. I mean, I guess that was always bound to happen. And I think my favorite scene is at the end of this episode when Yugi is walking towards Death Tea to save his grandpa. Kaiba and Mokuba have taken Yugi's grandpa hostage, and Yugi is walking towards Kaiba land to take on what is going to be known as Death Tea, and it's a cloud of smoke. And one by one, you see Janucci, you see Anzu, you see Honda, and you see Miho, who Miho is a manga exclusive and a Season 0 exclusive character, for those of you that might not know. And you see them all just one by one start to walk and join Yugi, and I just thought that scene was very powerful, especially with the smoke, and you see the silhouettes appear one by one. That might have been my favorite scene in Season 0, and that's where the show really kicks off in terms of the main plot, where Yugi is now going to have to face Kaiba. He goes through Death Tea with his friends. It even seems like during the third stage, Honda gets killed. We know he doesn't get killed, but it seemed like he got killed by crushing rocks. He kind of sacrificed himself. I thought that scene was pretty well done, that he helps Yugi, and then he's like, this is the end for me, guys, and you see his shirt is caught in the blocks, and I like that scene, and that's when Yugi... That led to Yugi just kind of going on the ground, innocent little Yugi, and saying, why does Kaiba hate me so much? And you really feel bad for the kid. And then he starts to get this angry look in his eyes, and he says to everyone, I have another personality. I've been denying it. I didn't want you guys to know because I didn't want to lose all my friends. And Janucci just grabs him and Janucci, I just love how this is like a running, and that's why I hope the new show, the 6th Yu-Gi-Oh series, has a character like Janucci. That's something that is lacked since Duel Monsters, just a best friend character that when he needs to can just, give a mean right hook and just say snap out of it, and it works. And that was a scene that worked after Yugi lost his soul to the Seal of Orichalcos in Duel Monsters, and it was a similar scene here in Season 0 in episode 23, I believe it was, and I like that scene a lot. Yugi then goes up against Mokuba in Capumon, which is a game that we saw a couple times. Goes up against Mokuba, and Mokuba, again, very sinister in the show, defeats Mokuba, and Kaiba puts his own brother through a punishment game, which is just horrible. And Yami, I should say, ends up saving Mokuba, and Yami goes on to face Kaiba. And what an episode 24, what an episode. We get Yami defeating Kaiba through Exodia. The scene was done very well. I don't know if it was done as well as it was in Duel Monsters, but I love the scene, I love the duel, I love the music. Episodes 25 to 27 is Yami versus Bakura. It was actually similar to when Bakura turned Yami's friends in Duel Monsters in Season 1 into, like, characters, into Duel Monster, like Junichi became Flame Swordsman. Similar to that, it was like a role-playing game, and it was entertaining, and Yami ends up defeating Bakura, and that's how the show ends. There was definitely more planned for this show, and this show does have a lot left to be desired, 19 years later, because this was out in 98. And I'm not sure why it got canceled after 27 episodes, or it didn't get canceled, it got picked up by another animation studio and they went a different route. The animation wasn't amazing. I think that was because it was very based off what the manga characters looked like, so maybe they tried to kind of adapt what the manga characters look like, and you gotta remember it's 1998. How great is animation, gonna be in 1998? Compared to nowadays where we're really spoiled with how beautiful and crisp some of the anime looks, but there's just a lot left I would have loved to see how they would have done Pegasus's character in terms of voice acting. I would have loved to see how they would have done Marek's character. A lot left to be desired here that we're just never going to know. We're never going to know. And one of the big indications to me that this was going to be a longer show is Shadi, the holder of the Millennium Scale. He kind of squares off with Yami in the beginning and clearly states that he's going to be back, and there was definitely plans to use him down the road. We never see him again after like episode 5 or 6, and that's because they just, I think, had to rush and kind of cancel the show, or conclude the show, I should say. So there's a lot left to be desired. I'm not going to say if I like this or Duel Monsters more, because Duel Monsters is 220 episodes, this is 27, so I think it's kind of unfair to judge. Of course, you can say which one you like more, but I'm not going to say which one I thought was a better show, because one has 200 episodes, the other has not even 30. I liked Season 0 a lot, though. I really do. A lot of the episodes kind of stand on their own. There's just a lot more viciousness. There's a lot more at stake in these games. I really enjoyed it. A few cons that I had, though. A lot of the games were confusing, and if you like Duel Monsters, if you only watch Yu-Gi-Oh! For the card game, I don't think you would like Season 0, because the card game is barely even utilized, and when it is utilized, there's a lot of things that don't really make sense. They don't explain, when a magic card is used, they don't explain what effect that has on a monster. And there's a lot of mechanics that, the best way to look at it, in my opinion, is kind of like a Pokemon, in a way, where you have two monsters battling each other, and whatever happens, happens. It's not like your traditional Yu-Gi-Oh! Where this monster has 3,000 attack, this monster has 2,000 attack, you know which one's going to win, because there's a lot of things that occur with the field bonuses that are given, and magic cards and effects that don't really make sense, and willpower even, and so there's a lot of, you just have to watch it. It's not your typical Yu-Gi-Oh! Card game. It's not. And a lot of the games, and this is something that it's tough for me to say looking back at it now 18 years down the road, but I wish that Yu-Gi-Oh! Implemented this more, that Yu-Gi-Oh! Maybe was more of a game show than a one-trick pony show, if that makes any sense. All Yu-Gi-Oh! Does is the card game, which makes sense because at the end of the day, Konami is trying to promote the card game through the anime. That's the main purpose of the anime. But I wish that Yu-Gi-Oh! Was more all these different kind of games. For instance, Capumon, the game that Yugi played against Mokuba, I think that could have been a very interesting game. Of course, they don't really tell you the rules and the effects that a lot of these characters have, so you don't really know what to expect going into it, which again, a lot of these games were confusing and over my head, and I don't think it's because, I don't play the card game that much. I think it's just because that's how the show was written, to be kind of ominous with who's gonna win, you don't really know as the viewer. Whereas nowadays, one monster goes up against the other. If that monster has more attack, they win. It's as simple as that. So that's definitely something I wish they did going forward a little more. They had different styles of games, and they tried it, I think, with Dungeon Dice Monsters and Duel Monsters, but since then, it's always been the card game, and I kind of wish, and don't get me wrong, I understand, they're, again, trying to advertise their card game. That's the main purpose of the anime, but I wish it was more like 80-20. It doesn't have to be like Season 0, where it was 80-20, where 20% was the actual Duel Monsters games, but make it 80-20 so that 80% of the show and the games that are played in the show are Duel Monsters, but how about 1/5 can be a version of Capumon or a version of Electric Concentration, for instance? Like, that was a really, really fun, sadistic game that they played. Of course, there's no way to kind of monetize that and turn it into a real game. I don't know if Dungeon Dice Monsters is a game in the real world. Maybe they tried to make it a game and it never took off. I gotta look more into that, but at the end of the day, I just wish that Yu-Gi-Oh! Maybe utilized more games instead of just one game going forward. 18 years down the road, it's been somewhat successful for them, but I do ask the question, if the card game didn't exist, how successful would the anime be? Would the anime have been over after Duel Monsters? Would the anime have been over after GX? It's quite possible. I mean, the card game is probably carrying the anime in terms of revenue. I don't like to think about that because, again, I love the anime, but if you made the anime more of a game anime where anyone can watch because there's different random games being played, I think that could have worked as well, but the formula they've done has worked. They've been in commission now for, if they announce a third show, it's going to be over 20 years of Yu-Gi-Oh! Or a sixth show, it'll be over 20 years of Yu-Gi-Oh! So their formula has paid off, but that's something I wish they utilized going forward. As for the characters, and then I'm going to conclude this review, Yugi is a lot more, I think, weak-minded in the Season 0 than he is in Duel Monsters, while Tem or Yami is a lot more vicious and powerful. Janucci and Honda, I love the humor between these two. I think it's episode 16 that almost had me in tears, the episode where they visit Janucci's sister, the only episode Serenity appears, and again, she's in the hospital sick, the only episode she appears in Season 0. The humor between them, at least once every other episode, literally had me laughing out loud, which Yu-Gi-Oh! Now and then I'll get a good laugh and I'll get a good kick out of it, but sometimes the jokes, even in the subs, are a little corny, but these jokes are so mature and humorous. I love the banter between Janucci and Honda. Anzu is she's a character that most people probably don't know that I do enjoy Anzu a lot. I think she's a really, in the English dub, she's annoying, but in the sub, which, again, I haven't seen Duel Monsters fully subbed, and in Season 0, I think she's a bit of a badass. I really do. I like her character a lot. I like the internal struggle she has between, is this Yugi, or is this Yugi, or, is this the Yugi that I like a lot, or is this the Yugi that I like a lot? I like that internal battle. I think there's a lot to her character. I like Anzu. Miho is a character that, it's kind of bizarre that she just evaporated into thin air after Season 0. They obviously felt that Serenity would have been a more humorous character to bring on because Honda is in love with Miho in Season 0, he's in love with Serenity in Duel Monsters, and Serenity is Janucci's sister, so obviously they felt there was more humor involved in there. At least that's why I think they brought on Serenity. But I would have liked to see Miho in Duel Monsters. She is a bit of a ditz. I mean, that's putting it nicely, but and she talks in the third person too, which annoys the heck out of me, but she was an interesting character. I think it's kind of weird that she just disappeared out of thin air and we've just never heard from her again. Like, when I first saw her in the opening, I had no idea who she was. I thought she'd be a very minor character, but she is a main character in the group. She's probably the sixth most important character in the show, so she definitely does play a pretty big role in Season 0. As for Kaiba, he's wicked. I mean, he's wicked in Duel Monsters too, but he's wicked in this show. I mean, really, really wicked. And Mokuba is just an evil little... I mean, he's a guy that will give you nightmares in Season 0. Someone who you can definitely feel bad for in Duel Monsters. Not like that at all in Season 0. He is a real creep, and someone that I was actually glad to see lose to Yugi in Capumon, and then I felt bad when he was getting his punishment game from Kaiba, and Atem saved him, and then shatters the heart in Kaiba, it shatters the evil heart in Kaiba. We never see from the two brothers again, but they're both vicious. Mokuba, towards the end, you can see streaks of what he was in Duel Monsters, where he you know, felt bad about what happened to Seto. Didn't feel bad, but like just wondered, how the hell did my brother become this twisted when he used to be a happy kid? And to my answer to that is that's just what a messed up past will do. We know the kind of past that Seto Kaiba had. Bakura, I like Bakura more in Season 0. He did more in Season 0 than he did in Duel Monsters, in my opinion. Yami Bakura was twisted. I don't think we saw enough of him to say he was as twisted as he was in Duel Monsters. Definitely had that potential, but Bakura, to see him fight back the way he did against the Dark Spirit possessing him, the Millennium Ring possessing him, I like that a lot. I think that added more depth. That made me respect Bakura's character a lot more. I'm talking about Bakura, not Yami Bakura. So I like Bakura's character a lot more in the brief stint we got of him in Season 0. Again, he only debuted in Episode 19. One last thing I want to touch on is in the opening. I think it's great because I always love to analyze the opening, and in the opening you can see hints, like you can see the character pieces right here of what happens in episode 25, 26, and 27. So late in the show, a huge foreshadowing there in the opening. Another thing you see here is Yami summoned Dark Magician. Dark Magician is never showed once in the show, which I was a little disappointed about. I would have liked to see Dark Magician at least once. That also indicates to me that there were more plans beyond episode 27 of this show. But Yami summons Dark Magician in the opening, and he doesn't summon him in the actual Season 0 anime, which I think is hilarious because we still to this day will talk about it's in the opening, but it doesn't mean it'll happen. That's been a trademark of Yu-Gi-Oh! Even going back to its early days of Season 0. So I love it. But all in all, guys, I recommend you check this out. It is mature. It is dark, but the music, I think the writing is good. It's 27 episodes, so you can watch it quickly, and I really did enjoy Season 0. I really did. You guys, let me know down below what you thought of Season 0, or what you thought of the clips regarding Season 0, or anything that I might not have touched on, or anything that you agree with what I said, disagree with what I said. But anyway, guys, I really hope you enjoyed my review of Yu-Gi-Oh! Season 0. Hopefully you'll subscribe and like the video. Again, thank you to BYG Aigami for creating this beautiful thumbnail for me. Check his channel out in the description. So thank you guys again for watching. I hope you have a fantastic day.